This is the 2025 Yamaha R9, and today we're going to be seeing if this bike is worth the hype or if you should consider some other options. So these Yamaha R9s recently came out, and due to some production delays, they are super hard to find. Locally, there was one dealership that had one of these available in this beautiful Yamaha blue. Other than that, they're super hard to find. So I am super excited to finally get to review this bike. But before we get too far into this review, let's show off a little bit of this bike. Now I gotta say, this is one beautiful looking bike. I originally was not a big fan of this Yamaha blue until I saw this bike in person for the first time, and I absolutely fell in love with the blue. I actually just recently bought a Yamaha MT-09 that I got in the same blue because of how good looking this bike is. All right, so if you're looking to pick up one of these bikes brand new, first off, good luck. They're extremely hard to find. If you do manage to find one, you're looking at roughly 15 to 16 out the door. This specific bike was about 15.5 out the door, so not terrible. But again, that's pricing if the dealership doesn't rip you off. I've heard other people paying close to 17 out the door. So just kind of depends on where you're buying it from and the dealership, but expect around 15 to 16 grand.
So here we are. We are finally on this 2025 Yamaha R9. I am so excited to put this bike to the test, ride it around, all that good stuff. So let's start out with the seating position of this bike. Now, as far as the seating goes, it's not nearly as aggressive as I thought it would be. It is a little more towards the aggressive side, not anything like a naked bike. I would say it's pretty in between. It's a little more aggressive. I would say it's about the same, really similar to my old ZX6 I had. It's not super uncomfortable, but it is a little bit more committed. So if you like a nice upright seating position, go with a naked bike. But overall, I don't really have any complaints about it. It feels comfortable. The seat itself feels comfortable. It all feels good.
All right, let's talk about the engine package on this bike. Now, this is the same engine coming from the well-known Yamaha MT-09. So it is a 890cc triple inline 3, putting out 117 horsepower at 69 foot-pounds of torque. Now, there is some slight differences between the R9 and the MT-09. First off, it is tuned slightly different since this is made a little bit more for more top-end speed versus naked bikes normally geared for torque. So it also has a smaller sprocket for a little bit more top end. I think you get an extra 5 miles an hour top speed with this versus the MT-09, but also this is full fairing, so it's going to feel a lot more stable. So overall, some slight differences, but either or might make sense depending on the type of riding you do.
So let's talk about how this engine feels. Now, the triple, as many of you know, is known for its torque, its very distinct sound, a lot of great things about it. So the reason why I like this engine so much is the fact that it has the characteristics of a twin mixed with a inline 4. Being a 3-cylinder, obviously that makes sense. So you get the low end power that a twin has. You know, you get torque right off the bat with this engine versus a inline 4. You gotta search for that power, you gotta rev it up, but you also do get a little bit of that inline 4 characteristic. You can rev this bike out pretty far and it keeps on making power, making for a very torquey and linear power band. Overall, in my opinion, this engine is the perfect commuter engine, the perfect bike for around town. It feels great, not to mention it feels great on the highway too. Those parallel twins, they do lack in kind of that highway top end speed, but for me, I don't do that much highway speed, but you could with this bike. It tops out at about 155 miles an hour, and I gotta say, on the highway, it felt great. I didn't feel like I was lacking power. I didn't feel like it bogged down after 100 miles an hour. It felt like it had plenty of torque and power, so no complaints there. I really do believe that this triple by Yamaha is the best engine for the road. All right, so one thing I did want to cover while we're talking about the engine of this bike is that second gear bog. Now, I don't know if you all are familiar with this or not, but you get a weird kind of bog when you hit second, you give it a bunch of gas. There's just a really weird bog, and it takes a minute to get out of that bog. From my research, it's something to do with the ECU tune. It's nothing major. It definitely is annoying. Just thought I'd mention it. Would I not buy this bike over that bog? No, but there is that bog, so you kind of have to, you know, go over that point where that bog is. You almost have to rev out first extra high to shift, which most of you probably are gonna do anyways, let's be honest. Or if you're just chilling, you won't even notice the bog. So just something to consider when looking at getting this bike. There is a weird second gear bog, but it's overall, it's not terrible, not the end of the world.
All right, real quick, let's do a sound check on this bike. Now, this does have have a stock exhaust, so this might not be relevant for everybody, but it's always nice to know what it sounds like either way. So let me start it up real quick and show you the beautiful sounds this bike makes. Again, it's a stock exhaust, so a little quiet, but it does sound really nice. Gotta love that triple sound.
Hey, while we're stopped in traffic, if you're looking for your next jet tag, click the link in the description down below. Next Ride Apparel, we sell a bunch of different jet tags for your beautiful motorcycles. We're even coming out with some special Yamaha blue ones soon, specifically for Yamaha blue bikes, so make sure to check it out. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, let's talk about the handling of this bike. Now, unlike the MT-09, this seating position is more aggressive, like I mentioned before. So taking turns, you know, it feels a lot more stable. There's just a different feel on a sport bike. Going through turns, it just feels a lot better. So overall, the handling of this bike feels great. It doesn't feel overall that much heavier than my MT-09. You don't really notice too much weight. It feels like a really light bike altogether. Like, I don't feel like slow speeds I'm gonna drop it, and I don't feel like there's a crazy amount of weight throwing it into turns. So it's a very nice balance between weight and power. Now this bike is equipped with KYB front forks that are adjustable. They feel super nice. I don't have them tuned right now. It is at the OEM settings. The rear shock is also obviously adjustable as well. And I gotta say, they feel great. There's just something about that nicer suspension on a bike that just makes it so much smoother to ride. It feels much more premium than those cheaper forks that come on the MT-09. Not the SP. The SP does come with upgraded forks, but the stock MT-09, MT-07, this suspension just feels so much better than those. Just a quick thing to mention, these turn signals are very different. Honestly, I don't know why they changed them, but for whatever reason, you gotta click it once, that'll turn your signal on, click it again, and it will turn off. Just a slight difference. I didn't really notice that at first, but it is different compared to, you know, the traditional turn signals where you click it and then you click in to cancel. This is not like that. You click it once to turn it on, click it again to turn it off. Just a subtle difference I noticed, something I wanted to mention.
All right, let's spend a minute talking about the tech package on this bike. Now, this bike comes with a couple different rider modes. You got sport mode, you got your street mode, and you have rain, as well as 2 fully customizable rider modes. Now, this bike does have a couple different rider aids. You got your power delivery, you got slide control, you got traction control, and you also have lift control. So those 2 modes allow you to go in and fully customize this bike to the exact way you ride.
Now, on top of all that tech I mentioned, this bike does come equipped with a quick shifter. Super nice for flipping through all those gears. I mean, honestly, most new bikes come with quick shifters, but it is nice that this does come with it. And it is quick shifting for up and down too, if you were wondering about that. Yes, it does do down quick shifting as well.
All right, so one thing I forgot to mention while riding this bike is the fact that this bike does come equipped with cruise control. Now, this will help with how comfortable this bike is, especially for those long rides. You know, your back, your wrists start to hurt. You want to take your hands off the bars. Now you can take 1 or 2 hands off your handlebars when you set that cruise control and rest your body for a minute.
All right, another question you might be asking about this bike is, how does it feel on the expressway? Now we are on, I don't know why that sounded so fruity, but we are on our way to the expressway right now. I'm gonna jump on. We'll see. How does the power feel? I am curious. On the MT-09, that bike feels very unstable at top speeds. Obviously, you got fairings now, you got winglet. This isn't an MT-09, it's a R9, so I'm very curious to see the difference in handling on the highway versus that MT-09. Now, overall, this bike feels super smooth on the highway thanks to that aggressive seating position and the fact that you have full fairings. There's way less wind in your face, it just blows past you. And as far as just overall feel of the bike goes, this thing feels so stable, super smooth. I'm loving the suspension they put on this bike. I got 0 complaints about this bike on the highway. Power also is great. Getting that 69 foot-pounds of torque is very nice, and it doesn't really bog down that much from my experience. Now, I didn't fully send this bike, so I can't really say for sure what that top-end speed, where it kind of bogs down at, but I do know my MT-09, after about like 120, 130, it feels like it slows down a little bit there. But this is a R9, not an MT-09, but I can imagine being the same engine, it would be pretty similar. All right, now who is this bike for? Now, I think if you're somebody that likes the fully faired sport bike, you know, you get along with the aggressive seating position that sport bikes have, I think this bike is a perfect daily. You know, the engine this thing has great characteristics. You got the low down torque of the parallel twin mixed with the higher power of the inline four, you know, ringing it out. You get a perfect mix, and I just feel like, you know, the way this thing makes power is perfect for the street. You know, you, like I said, you got that low end torque, but you can also rev this thing out nice and long like the inline fours out there. So I think it makes for a really good daily bike. The only issues I would have with this bike, and the reason why I got an MT-09 over this bike, would be not only price. That was a factor for me. This bike is expensive and they're hard to find, but also just that seating position for me. I prefer naked bikes. I would easily own a sport bike if it weren't for the seating position. I'm just more of a kind of commuter, naked bike kind of guy. I like to be comfortable. I don't do a lot of highway commuting, but I think for somebody that enjoys that, you know, the sport bike look with the seating position, then this is the perfect bike because it's not a heavy bike. You get a good mix of power, you get a good mix of the weight. It's not super heavy. There's just a lot of good things about this bike, let alone the suspension and tech package on top of the Brembo brakes. It's just a very premium feeling motorcycle, and I think anybody that buys this would not regret it. If you're thinking about buying it, definitely go ahead and buy it. I think you won't regret it. I've had a blast on it. Absolutely perfect engine in my opinion.